Assassin's Creed Shadows got a gameplay demo. It didn't show off too much, and I've seen better, more informative gameplay showcases from Assassin's Creed games in the past, but this is what we have and this is what we'll take a look at. I'll talk about what I noticed and what it might mean for gameplay, and the final section of this talk will be my overall feelings and emotional response to what we saw. I dislike all acting in modern Assassin's Creed, with rare exception. I need you to understand though, I don't usually complain about this kind of thing, but it is finally getting to me, and I'm starting to crack. I think the last time we got good, entertaining acting in Assassin's Creed was Origins, and certain scenes with Eivor and Basim in Valhalla. Acting in body language in modern AC games is emotionally disengaging, not entertaining, and lacking in dynamism. It's workmanlike. It does the basic job of giving bland context for the next person you're gonna stab, but it's rarely something players sit and enjoy with rapt attention for its own entertainment's sake. Ubisoft can't do anything about it this late in development, but it's a constant problem in Assassin's Creed, and it makes it very hard to care about your narratives, no matter how well written or otherwise well made they are. I don't know what it will take to have engaging, spicy, interesting acting and body language again that doesn't just make players tune out and mash through your dialogue, but it doesn't show any signs of changing. Again, those who have followed me for a time know I'm usually very lenient on this kind of thing. In fact, it actually takes a lot to draw a complaint out of me when it comes to something that's not gameplay. But it's been very noticeable for so long now, I've finally reached the point where I want to express that it's starting to seriously bother me, and I'd appreciate improvement. If at all possible, I hope future AC teams please invest in dynamic, entertaining acting that is fun to watch and listen to for its own sake. The dialogue in many other contemporary games is much more emotionally gripping and flavorful, and it doesn't all have to do with its writing, but its delivery and presentation too. You can have the best script, and acting that doesn't engage the listener will still make them tune it out. In a sense, acting that isn't interesting or flavorful to watch and listen to hurts a decent or good script much more than it hurts a poor one, and I think we should remember that moving forward. Likewise, it doesn't take much dialogue density to captivate players if what is present is voiced and delivered in a way that grips people and holds their attention. FromSoft games notably don't have that much dialogue, and what is there is often cryptic and inscrutable, yet we listen, because the voice actors they get for those games and the voice direction those people receive never sounds like they're just reading something off a page. Every single character feels like a shifty bastard with something to hide, and it intrigues. AC's contemporaries, whether on final release or during gameplay reveals and vertical slices, consistently feature more engaging, entertaining voice work and audio than Assassin's Creed does. Just look at the Perfect Dark and Dragon Age demos we just got, and it certainly affects not just players' enjoyment, but their likelihood of buying in emotionally to the world you've created. So with that out of the way, let's start breaking down gameplay. The demo starts with Yasuke, which I think is a sensible choice on the part of marketing. He's a big, bold personality, a bruiser and tank of a player character whose role is to batter down enemy defenses and smash into the thick of things with unstoppable flow. So what he does for viewers in this demo is what he'll be doing in game. He commands attention, he's hard to ignore. Everyone's got an opinion on him, just like characters in game. This also lets them save Naoe, the assassin character, for later, since they know invested fans will be most interested in her. Fair enough. While we get some opening footage of Yasuke wandering through a village with decent crowd density for a space that isn't a city, I don't think social stealth has ever been mentioned even once as being a gameplay feature in Shadows. If it has, it was somewhere I missed, so please put links to articles, from the dev team saying it's present, if you find any. As far as I'm aware now, it doesn't exist in the game. It's safe to assume until proven otherwise that it's not a system we have here. Given the setting and this dev team's tendencies, I also didn't really expect it. Here, we see a child NPC hailing Yasuke. I don't think this is a cinematic or demo thing, and I don't think this is a set piece or mission specific thing. I think this is organic open world behavior, given what we've been told about the spy network system in articles and tweets. I could be wrong, but for now I imagine hailing is a way to pull the player's attention to a nearby objective as Naoe and Yasuke build reputation or improve their spy network, since it seems this game is less direct with popping map markers around if you don't scan for them yourself. When Yasuke gets his assassination task, we see a list of clues listed under his objectives in the top left. These help you narrow down where an objective or target will be, and they get more clues added to the list and become replaced with more accurate ones as you discover new info. This is an extension of Quebec's exploration mode concepts from Odyssey. I'm glad they didn't give up on it because that feature, despite being undercooked, had great potential at the time, and it seems they're leaning on it very hard this time. This is good. Assassin's Creed is often allergic to iterative improvements on existing mechanics or features, so it's always great to see something that existed before be built on instead of thrown away or side-graded for something different. At 650 in the video, we get a look at the map. It's a clean, smooth, sterile Animus aesthetic, which makes sense if you notice the Abstergo icon in the top left corner. Here we also see the spy network in action with one of its mechanics used, a scout token. The player has 3 of them in stock at the left side of the screen, and once consumed, you can have one of your ninjas, which are this game's recruits, scout an area for you for important people or things. The Animus speeds up this process so it's displayed as a ping or pulse. While this is basically just an extra step in between you and plopping a waypoint on a map marker, the fact that it's a limited resource you have to wait to get back means there are many more chances for you to stumble on opportunities or be hailed by NPCs as you wander around the world. That's how I'm understanding it. In other words, the genius of the design is that getting the pinpoint location of exact objectives is just enough of a pain in the ass that it will make players actually walk around, use their senses, move toward things that grab their curiosity and look interesting in the distance. The other benefit of map pulses using Ninja Scouts is that it makes the process of map clear much less overwhelming. Everyone remembers the meme that AC Unity's map was. Basically, this is the opposite of that. You only see a limited amount of potential pursuits at any time, so you'll face much less decision paralysis. I think this is a cool feature. Of all the innovations I'm most curious about, this one is probably at the top of the list. One really notable thing about this is, information you discover is smoothly added to the intel nested under a main objective in real time, if you happen to come across it yourself rather than getting it from one of your spies. In the Naoe section later on, the player overhears guards talking about the route a target wanders along, and that new intel is immediately stacked under the info she already knows. This is a great feature. In some situations, it can make information become the most valuable collectible or world pickup you could possibly come across, much more potent and powerful than any sword or armor. Soon, Yasuke enters combat against some guards. Before we get into the actual flow of combat, I want to briefly touch on the UI. Down D-pad seems to be your whistle, which you can use to lure guards over to you, standard stuff. Up is your heal. Left D-pad is your katana or your anti-health weapon, and right D-pad is your kanabo, a heavy Japanese club, which is your anti-armor weapon. Your health is of course displayed, and just above it you have your adrenaline segments, which in this game have been conspicuously redesigned to look like Ghost of Tsushima's resolve pips. That's all I'm gonna say about that, I just found it amusing. On the right side of the screen we have our slotted active skills, which are cast by holding right trigger and pressing a face button. Now on to combat. Enemies have red, blue, and no attack glints, depending on what attack they're trying on you, which feel very familiar if you have played Ghost of Tsushima recently. You have to dodge reds, you have to parry blue combo strings in a sequence it looks like, and less significant incoming hits just have no glint at all, so you can respond to them however you want. The kanabo Yasuke is using in this fight is good at crushing armor. Every weapon can break down an enemy's armor by using charged light or heavy attacks, which the game calls posture attacks. But the kanabo is particularly good at armor break given it's a heavy blunt weapon. Enemies take massively increased damage if you shatter their armor off, but you can still hurt their health if you hit them while they have it. Posture attacks can be done by holding your light or heavy attack button at any point in a string. Holding an attack like this leaves you vulnerable, so you can't defend yourself while you do it, but learning gaps you can push a charged attack into is part of skill expression in combat. Notably, there are no damage numbers in AC Shadows. You can't even turn them on, it looks like. And while gear and stats are an important part of the experience, the devs mention in their deep dive video that you can almost always supplement a stat deficiency with refined player skill. So being good at combat is much more about how you use your buttons and your mind than your raw numbers. I think this is a great change and it fits the series very well. Statting and gearing are still there for players who have a harder time overcoming things with pure control of their actions, and to just make fighting certain hard enemies less punishing. Yasuke's leap skill here makes the screen go black and white for a moment. This is a repeated visual motif in Shadows. It also happens whenever you assassinate a target. Speaking of assassinating targets, it happens next. Yasuke fights this boss. I imagine you could just stab this guy in the back if you chose to play as Naoe instead, but here we see him fought in open combat, and his health and armor bar take up the whole screen. Shattering armor seems more important on bosses or targets than on just basic grunts, which you would expect. Combat has the kind of back and forth inspired by stuff like Sekiro and the duels from Ghost of Tsushima, which again is something players should find familiar and settle into with no issues. Yasuke seems like a unique character. It looks like he has his own ways to fail and succeed at playing him, which is really important to differentiate him from his counterpart, something Assassin's Creed has not been very good at doing ever since they started playing around with dual protagonists. In the past, both characters were functionally identical. Sure, they had some different skills, but when it came down to it, that didn't ever matter. You basically played them the same. Yasuke and Naoe appear to have very distinct strengths and weaknesses, and that's really cool to see so far. I hope that's actually true and remains the case in the final game. Here's the thing, combat looks cool, but it does look a little basic. I'm left wondering if there will really be enemies and fights that challenge me if I decide to specialize in the combat-focused character. This matters, they're going out of their way to push two parallel player fantasies, so neglecting one is not the play. I didn't love it when they did it to stealth, and I wouldn't appreciate it if they do it to combat either, because I mean, it wouldn't be true to their word, right? They promised one thing, I want to see them deliver. I feel it's really important that Yasuke faces challenges that push his player's prowess and control over his kit. They've talked up a lot of stealth innovations and improvements around the stealth gameplay loop when it comes to Naoe. So right now, one of my worries is that Naoe has a lot of cool advanced stealth play that pushes a player to learn how to pilot her, and then Yasuke is just the combat guy you play if you don't want to sneak around. I don't want him to be a simple character. I don't want him to be a fallback or a bone we throw to players who don't want to sneak. He should have content, whether mandatory or optional, that properly taxes your mastery of this kind of play. Otherwise, it'll be another case of AC only going halfway with a promising concept once again. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I am saying their communication so far focused on gameplay depth firmly centered around Naoe's expertise. She's good at what she does, and encounters suitable difficulties or hard enemies that encourage a player to understand her and play her differently in different situations. Yasuke's good at what he does, but so far I don't know if you'll have similarly satisfying tension centered around his capabilities. I hope he does. Once the target's dead, we switch to Naoe, something you can do almost any time as long as you're not in a restricted area or in combat. And now, Naoe's infiltration begins at night. She has a similar UI to Yasuke, so we don't need to revisit it much, except to note that instead of a kanabo, in this gameplay she carries a kusarigama, a sickle and weighted ball on a chain. Very classic, iconic ninja weapon. In addition, other tools she carries are smoke bombs, small bells to lure guards, high ammo count shuriken to break objects like light sources or inflict stagger on enemies, and low ammo count kunai, which are lethal projectiles to pop guys in the head with for ranged stealth kills. Naoe has eagle vision, which is appreciated, and a concept that is very uniquely Assassin's Creed. It's one of the abilities we see recur throughout the series that is inextricably connected to the lore of this universe and its major characters. In this game, guards and their facing are clear and readable in eagle vision, which is really good, just like in Mirage. It seems they really learned from the hard-to-parse guard facing of Valhalla's Odin sight, and it's a lesson that's stuck, so this is relieving to see. The screen filter also isn't painful to look at, which is important. Here's where things get different. Underneath the restricted area indicator at the top middle, we see our new visibility meter. You are more visible in light and less visible in shadow in this game, to the point where you can assassinate people from the front and they won't even see you coming, provided you approach them in darkness. You can remove light sources like lanterns by throwing projectiles at them to enable kills like that. A faster-paced take on something like Thief or Splinter Cell, which I feel the series was always going to embrace. It was a matter of time. If social stealth continues to be de-emphasized, then it's only natural traditional stealth concepts continue to grow and be deepened. The noise you make matters too, as does your stance to a greater degree than before. Case in point, now it can go prone and either crawl through grass, which isn't that exciting since we basically had that before with crouching, or being so low to the ground to hide herself with short objects or terrain that are too short to crouch behind. These improved stealth actions strike me as not just something you can do, they're probably something you must do. We'll need to learn to do them well in order to succeed, so players will be forced to consider their environment and their impact on it way more than before. I've talked about this privately with friends, but I predict this more demanding, stricter stealth system with more ways to fail if you play too sloppy will give existing AC fans who aren't used to stealth systems from tougher series a bit of a hard time starting out. So yeah, this will be a problem for some people who aren't expecting the level of seriousness this new stealth will sometimes require. But it's okay. We'll hook you up with the guides you need to feel like a badass if you find yourself struggling. It only makes sense too. We're used to fast-paced systems whose tension essentially goes away as soon as you reach a basic level of mastery. But with this one that asks players to earn their speed and constantly stay aware of what's around them, I can imagine the subreddit getting some complaints from people who had it way too easy in the years before. Especially true given Naoe, just like Arno and Bossim, is not that great in a fight. You can take out a small group, no worries, but any more than that and you should strongly consider leaving before you're cut down. Not all capital A assassins behave like lowercase a assassins, but this one certainly does, and I think some players will be really happy about that. For me, as long as everything works correctly and the system is challenging because it asks you to master what your character can do, rather than due to bugs or glitches, I'm perfectly okay with it. Being detected because I messed up is just fine, even if it's hard, even if I have to slow down to find success. No problem with that. Hard cover returns from Unity. You can snap to a cover object and peek around it, leaving you hidden from enemy vision while giving you a look at the space ahead. Important feature if you're going for a slightly more hardcore stealth bent, so it's nice it's here. Hopefully it's easy to enter and exit without having to wrestle the controls though. AC Unity PTSD flashbacks. All stealth kill animations on Naoe's end seem very fast and snappy, retaining momentum and giving you control of your character back quickly. This is amazing. We've been plagued by the bane that is overly sluggish assassination animations in AC for a long time now, especially playing characters meant to be agile and dexterous. It wouldn't make sense for more rogue aspected assassins to kill so slowly, but it makes even less sense for an assassin who is also a ninja. I also want to shout out that although modern Assassin's Creed tends to revisit the idea of an assassin being expressed through the lens of an existing identity, a ninja is one of the best, most fitting, and most resonant ones we've seen in a long time. Brotherhood assassins and shinobi have a lot in common in ways that some of the other player characters we've seen absolutely don't. I like this expression. I have no issues with it at all, conceptually. I think throwing a fit around whether a ninja is assassin enough goes way too deep into the territory of splitting hairs. It works well, I'm happy with it, now they just have to execute. Later, we see Naoe use her grappling hook to grab and drag with her an NPC into a nearby building, staying out of sight and letting her decide their fate while hidden. This is a clear evolution of the kidnap mechanic Quebec featured in AC Syndicate, and it even lets you end the action with one of the same two branches, kill or knock out. Here, she does a knockout. I love this mechanic, I think this is cool as hell. You move fairly quickly, even while dragging someone, so I can see this being a great way to pull people to where you want and hide them before actually removing them from play. Splinter Cell lets you drag people during a stealth grab, and this is in keeping with the inspirations. Naoe also has a gap closer stealth kill using her Kusarigama, which lets her basically dash to an unaware guard and assassinate them quickly. I don't know how much noise this makes since this guard is pretty isolated, but I don't imagine this action is free in terms of sound generation. It is free in terms of resource costs though. It is very explicitly not an ability. It doesn't cost any adrenaline, and it uses the normal assassinate button input. So this is something we're meant to feel free to use whenever we see an opportunity. It's also nice as a movement action, which is appreciated because movement remains very basic. Naoe still has auto parkour with a basis in what looks like the AC Origins to Mirage system. Players like Memento Gallery have even spotted the same jump animation that Bayek and Cassandra use, so I wouldn't expect a movement revamp. If there was one, we would have known about it by now. Whatever depth movement has on offer for Naoe looks accessed through her grappling hook, which, to be charitable and fair to the game, is an improvement. I don't think it was ever a smart idea to expect or hope for this game to be the one that gives us explosively advanced freeform movement, but it still stings a little that we don't have that much to play with, don't get me wrong. You can grapple with proper physics, you seem to be able to release or assassinate from a swing at any point in your arc, and the grappling hook can help you extend vertical wall runs upward to grab ledges you otherwise wouldn't have been able to. So while I think basic movement is exactly that, too basic, the hook itself is something I appreciate for having some extra buttons to press. The way I see it right now is like this setting and this era's equivalent of the hook blade. You have your base movement actions, which here are not terribly advanced, fair enough, and you have a modifier button or tool you can use to access branched actions that give you a different effect or put you in a different position. I don't really expect all that much skill expression here. The focus is firmly on challenging line of sight, light and sound, stealth play, and thoughtful combat against enemy groups or one-on-one bosses. Movement is just kind of how you get around in between the actual gameplay, which hurts my soul to say out loud, but that's what it is. What the devs call the breathing stick is a documented shinobi tool or technique. However historically accurate you want to argue it is, I don't really care that much, as long as they reference publicly available text to express something which seems plausible for this character to do, which they clearly did. Gameplay-wise, it's a very cool mechanic. Normally, being underwater necessitates a time limit. You can only stay under so long before you drown. But in this game, Naoe can chill there for a long time as long as she stays still and close to the water's surface. I imagine it's probably easier to do this in dark environments than brighter ones, but time will tell. She assassinates her target soon after, and we get a small look at combat with her, which is presented to us as being more focused on crowd control and managing enemy actions before buying yourself an opportunity to escape. Since Naoe is not the kind of operative that wants to stay inside a fight, she wants to leave and reset the situation back to a state where she's strong. Stealth. A brief thing I want to mention, there's footage floating around online of Naoe trying to assassinate a visibly chonky looking fella with humongous armor that I would recognize visually from a mile away. This special enemy type denies assassinations, which has been the cause of some murmuring. You can turn this off in the options and stab him anyway, by the way, but let's talk about this. Quebec's previous game, Odyssey, also featured assassinations that could fail. And if that happened, there was kind of nothing you could do about it except that you're in combat now, and some people are saying that this is basically the same thing. Except it isn't. Players don't actually understand the reason why that was bad, so I'll do my best to clear things up and explain why this is fine here when it wasn't there. The difference is, in Odyssey, you didn't know when a target was killable or not, unless you put your body close enough to them for the HP slice out your stealth attack prediction displayed to actually show up. That's a problem, because in a stealth game, putting your body right behind someone means you're inherently already taking a risk. What makes this fine is that you can see from a distance and at a glance that this big dude is a big dude, a dude who is big, with big armor. I can see with my eyes from very, very far away, so far away that I'm nowhere near enough to even consider killing him yet, that he's armored and big, that he's huge with a ton of armor. I can see it from super far away. I'm not guessing anything. I'm not risking anything. I don't have to do that cringe, awkward shuffling back and forth while crouched of, not sure if I can kill this guy. I'll go into check and then fall back if I can't. My character feels weak and unsure of herself. No, I know. This enemy type looks different from others, and I know with 100% certainty that if I try a certain type of interaction on him, it will be the incorrect player behavior and it will fail. That's fine. That's clear, readable, good design, and a decent source of tension to place in parts of a level that demand a little more attention and care to approach effectively. I think another fun thing that no one I've seen is considering is you can probably break this guy's armor. This game has that new armor shatter system where posture attacks can destroy plating and armor on foes, so I figure one of the first things I'll try is breaking that enemy's armor off, re-entering stealth and trying to stab him then. If that doesn't work, then that's fair, you won. Until then though, you're slamming another smart piece of iterative design, a good, quality change to something that almost had the right idea, but just didn't quite get it right the last time. And hey, if you still just hate the very concept of it, you can just turn it off in the menu. Do that and go in peace. Easy. With all that said, it's time to talk about my overall thoughts and feelings on what we saw. I think the gameplay demo they showed for this was not their best foot forward. I've seen better, more exciting, and more informative demos for previous games, which were still accurate to the final game, like Mirage's for example, so it's not a matter of exaggerating something. I think if they get a chance, I wouldn't mind a second gameplay demo later in the marketing cycle to kind of reach those players who felt very whelmed by this showcase, and came away feeling like, yeah, it's a video game. It felt like so much was glossed over, and we didn't get long, uninterrupted play with either character. Assassin's Creed Shadows was always a game I was curious and interested in, but it was never a game that properly excited me the way Mirage did, except for Naoe's stealth play specifically, which is one half of the game. I think that's very reasonable and very fair, and if you understand the kind of player I am, then you also understand why I would feel that way from the very start. I think a lot of Assassin's Creed players who hung their hopes on this game could use a reminder that this wasn't really made for players like me, and it was never really going to be. My people, my rogues, we know about this. We've known about this for a while now. I don't think this is a surprise, and I don't think it's really a revelation. Remember, Ubisoft self-admittedly make different Assassin's Creed games for different groups of players, and Shadows is one of the games not targeted at players hungry for movement or a more traditional, dense cityscape experience. These are different games trying to be different things, and importantly, trying to be those things for a different type of player. While Mirage's shortcomings were a result of the game's low time budget, low money budget, and inherited flaws from Valhalla, Shadows is a very distinct case from that. These things missing from Shadows aren't mistakes, they're purposeful divergences in focus. Shadows is successfully doing what it has set out to do by the looks of it, and social stealth and crazy parkour being absent are just features that aren't part of that game's vision. The reason that would have hurt me before, but I don't really feel much about it now, is because I've read that same article and interview that you've also read, that we've all read, that mentions this is how it's going to be now. I watched the big open world RPG fans of the series last year get blasted by a similar feeling of disappointment, and it didn't make any more sense then than this makes now. Don't expect the dense city game from the title that's explicitly not doing that. And don't expect the crazy huge RPG game from the tight focused city game coming around the corner probably. This is what we were told directly, and I took that at its word. Now, with that sensible logic and reason stuff handily out of the way, what do I actually find cool or not cool about what we saw? I think stealth is going to be this game's claim to fame. AAA has lacked properly tense, engaging light and shadow, noise and stand stealth with a big budget for a long time. Metal Gear Solid 5 was the last serious stealth game I remember in the big budget space that punished you properly for being detected, and didn't usually offer an easy way out if you were, until you unlocked some of those methods on your own and had the presence of mind to deploy them effectively without being told when you should use them, so many players just didn't. I think the spy network is also a really cool feature, and it can help curb compulsive behavior a little by not surfacing everything available to do all in one big pile. I hope the game doesn't have a checklist or tracker of things, and features no achievements that demand you collect all of Nobunaga's 100 seals or anything like that. Let players come across things naturally, or as a result of their spies feeding them information. But I think this enabling of compulsively vacuuming up everything in the world is something that is ill-suited to games that don't have fun, repeatable, and enjoyable movement. So stuff like this is okay in Spider-Man or classic Assassin's Creed because the simple act of moving around is fun enough that having a collectible on the other end is just a cool excuse to do that. On the whole, I'm not as impressed with this game's animations and visuals as some other people I've seen are, which makes me feel a little bit crazy. I'm not sure what it is about them. Barring nighttime, which always looks good in AC games, Shadows to me just lacks this spicy feeling of atmosphere I look for in Assassin's Creed, personally. I think that it looks detailed, I think that it looks graphically intensive, but I'm not ready to say that translates to being visually fun to look at as I run through its world. This is probably something that being demoed at 30 FPS and through YouTube compression doesn't do favors to. But at the same time, games with more striking art direction and thicker atmosphere can still draw me in and wow me, despite presenting upon the same stage and playing field, so I don't know. I think movement is kind of whatever. I'm still waiting for an Assassin's Creed game that rewards button skill and deliberate practice and improving at parkour to get a tangible boost in my enjoyment, but this was probably never going to be that game, so it's not a betrayal or anything, and it was also never mentioned as a focus or goal in any communications from devs, so yeah, I just didn't expect it. I'm not really sure what else there is to say about this. It's kind of weird to be excited for half of a game, but it is what it is. I have no issues with Yasuke, I think he's a sick character, and I already know combat players like Gamebreaker God or SSJ Lang will cook some incredible combat sequences and combo flows, just stylishly ripping people apart without taking a scratch. But you know me, I'm a stealth guy, I'm a rogue in the shadows, a wraith in the mist, and that's what I'm into. I also do like movement, so just because I knew I wouldn't really get much of it doesn't mean I'm jumping for joy or happy it's not here. I'm not. I would obviously enjoy the game more if it were. And in case it wasn't obvious what I mean by half of a game, Naoe is half the game, and her stealth is half of her gameplay, the other half being her combat and movement. That's really all I care about. And when you see me covering the game, you should remember that's the part I'm actually interested in, and it's really tough to get myself invested or excited about the rest of it, for now. Everything there is just kind of there. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening. If there's more news to look at later, I'm sure I'll cover that at a later date. But yeah, may fog shroud you, may stars light your way, and may the night keep you safe.